Hey Gabe.
What's up, Scott? This is going to be fun, as
Yeah,
always.
I'm really excited about today's interview with Brandy Katterhagen and Bravo Safety. So she's got the best of both worlds. I think some folks out there will be envious of her full-time gig and her consulting gig, and we kind of dig in how she launched on the consulting gig while working.
Yep.
And she's got some amazing advice for us today.
Yeah, what I loved about this conversation too, without giving away too many details, because it really was a fun chat. Brandy's professional experience has been all within safety, but it's kind of bounced back and forth with different areas. And so I feel like with people that are in the safety field, they might be finding themselves bumping up against the wall or hitting some sort of a ceiling, or maybe even just getting bored with what they're doing. And Brandy has some great advice and stories about how she was purposeful in that pivoting and found ways to continue moving forward in her career.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's got some of those some of that advice where you're like, oh my God, like why haven't we been talking about this all along? So
Right.
so definitely stick through to the end, and we'll include Brandy's coordinates in the description so you can reach out. I encourage you to connect with her on LinkedIn and make sure she's part of your network.
Awesome.
Well, I'm Scott Cuthbert, co-founder of Safeopedia.
And I'm Gabe Encarnacion, president of BDL Safety.
And we're excited to be here today for another episode of Safeonomics.
Woohoo.
Yeah, and we got an interesting guest today with Brandy and her background in safety and consulting. And I know there's a lot of folks out there interested in kind of dipping their toe in the consulting pond or pool. So we're going to definitely dive into that today. So uh, did we have a kicking off point, or should we just turn it over to Brandy to do an intro? We didn't
Let,
we
let, yeah, let's Brandy, tell us about your consulting, how you got into it, kind of what led you to that to where you are today.
Oh wow. Well, that's a 20-year-old journey that I could start with. So I've been consulting now just since 2020 and pretty excited about that.
Hmm.
However, it is something that I do part-time and I still juggle a full-time job as well, which is also a type of consulting. So I enjoy really learning so much about all these different industries that I get to support and meeting so many different people, and the variety of problems that I get to solve is just so much fun. So that's what led me to consulting is one, knowing all these different people over the last 20 years, and two, solving some problems.
Nice.
Yeah.
and how did you initially get into safety?
Oh, well, actually, I started my career in environmental compliance. And so if we back up a little bit further, an environmental studies degree, and I think there's an important piece here because if I'm not correct in thinking, this whole safety journey is very purposeful, but I didn't know that at first. So
Hmm.
starting out in environmental, I thought I was going to be tromping around the woods and a DNR officer. And then I realized what they would probably get paid and that it was hard to get into that particular job. So I transitioned real quick, like in the middle of my degree, to go from natural resources to environmental studies and opened up the playing field to industrial environmental compliance, which I'm grateful for because that's really what led me into safety. After a few years of working environmental compliance, and at that point, I was a corporate employee and was able to see about 45 different manufacturing sites in just 2.5 years. I realized that I did not love doing permits and analyzing, wastewater treatment permits and air permits and some of the aspects that were very core to environmental compliance.
Hmm.
But what I also realized is how much I loved getting out and meeting the people and seeing how we could help them become better in any way.
Hmm.
As you guys know, environmental health and safety kind of goes together. And where I was working, that department was joined. And so I had exposure to what safety looked like. It was a Department of Defense contractor, so needless to say, there was a lot of safety protocols and expectations. So with that bit of exposure, I once again pivoted and found a role that allowed me to see environmental health and safety expanding into more of a safety professional at that time. The pivoting, I think, is paramount in this conversation, because what I hope our viewers kind of think about is, just because you made a decision based on your passion and what you thought it was going to be doesn't mean you can't change. And furthermore, hopefully you do change over the course of your career, because that's what a good professional does. Really, again, like I said, I transitioned into safety, and again, a regional position where I was more in the Midwest and looking at agricultural practices for seed production. And that was really cool. I also had some supporting aspects for chemical production, herbicides, pesticides, and so forth. So big manufacturing. And as life just so happened, I was in the middle of, getting married and starting that whole piece of my world, and ended up moving out to the family farm. That brought me into being a safety director for a sugar milling operation. And that's really where I would say I think I cut my teeth the most on safety, and learned how much compassion really is required in this profession. So there's a good chunk of my life. At that point, I was at that plant for about just shy of a decade. And, I had my kids there, big belly waddling around the plant floor. And thankfully, I had about 350 people that were part of my family, because really the folks at that plant were amazing. And I'm so grateful to have really that experience where I got to connect at that level. Moved on from there to also a director of health and safety at a metalworkings and fabrication facility. I wasn't there long. The distance was a little bit too great for the lifestyle I had wanted, and transitioned quickly into another metalworking job. Huge weld shop, again, with 300 plus people. And I was just so excited to experience different things. As you guys are well aware, when it comes to safety and manufacturing, there's lots of ways to do it. And there's lots of different exposures to learn about. So over the course of all of this, it just was so much fun to continuously learn and apply, and become, tenured in the safety career. I think what really was cool was when I was, working, and I had a prior coworker call me and say, "Hey, I'm now the plant manager somewhere else, and we need your help." And that's what triggered my consulting, if you will, on the side, but also kind of opened up that dream around consulting and how this would work. I took the opportunity to say, "Yeah, I'll help you out." And so, of course, I went and got my LLC and my insurance and all the things, and started supporting this 24/7 food production facility. While all that was going on, I was going, "Hey, consulting's actually really fun." So I went ahead and transitioned my W-2 employment also to a consulting capacity, in hopes that I would learn what really good looks like. And in that, whether I decided to transfer down the road into just my consulting, my personal consulting, or maintain the career place where I'm at, it just lended to excellence on both sides. So that's kind of how I got into consulting. Was I got tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, come help us out," and found out that I really loved it. So yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. So I'm glad you used the word pivot a few times, because it sounds like that's kind of been the name of the game for you with how you've been kind of crafting your career and the areas that you're moving into. So what are some of the ways where you really, I'm assuming you got to that point in certain times where it just felt like, okay, this is not what I'd like to do, or hey, I'd like to pursue something else. What do you do after you hit that kind of moment when it's like, oh no, I want to do something different? What's the next step? How do you even start to do that pivot?
Awesome question. I could go so many places with that. Um, so just kind of off the cuff, I knew that I wanted to have a career that wasn't so diverse that I was a novice all the time. Does that make sense?
That
Where,
makes complete sense. Yep.
I don't want to be an environmental professional and then turn into a welder and then turn into an electrician and then turn into a business owner. Like,
Right.
I wanted to see myself grow to be a subject matter expert. And so each time I pivoted, I looked for opportunities that could somehow connect my story and elongate that career in provide the opportunities for growth, but also
Mm.
not let go of so many of the things I had learned. So that was one piece. The other thing that each time I did pivot, it had to be purposeful. It wasn't just for the sake of pivoting. There had to be a true sound reason. Whether that was location, hey, I'm moving, that's a pretty good reason.
Yeah, seriously.
Or, I think I've done everything I can here and it's time for a change. And I think, there's two types of activators that cause you to change careers. One is you're kind of done there,
Hmm.
or perhaps it's a life thing. I have 3 children now. I cannot do the 24/7 gig and get called at 3 a.m. every day.
Right.
Um, so, there has to be reason. And then the other thing about the pivot, and I think this is important too, is people get stale. If you're doing the same thing every day for decades and decades, you're kind of robbing yourself of that life, of that
Hmm.
ability to keep reinventing yourself. So many of us in the safety arena or any compliance arena or ISO, based arena is the plan, do, check, act. It's the continuous improvement model. And I think that's an opportunity to say, hey, do I need to pivot? Plan, do, check,
Hmm.
act. How many times have you circled that wagon in the career you're in or in the position you're in to say, yeah, I'm really thorough and I'm really, really good, but now what?
Sure.
So I think there's that.
Yeah, and that might lead into question I wanted to ask was a lot of the folks that we talked to are didn't necessarily intend safety as a career, but they got into it, and then they get into that mid-level kind of position and they're not sure how to move their career forward. Now you've had a number of senior roles in the different organizations you work for, plus you notice a lot of letters behind your name as well. So wondering, what advice you'd have as far as, pushing through that maybe mid-level to get to the senior level, within your organization or maybe in your next position.
Yeah, I appreciate that question because again, being intentional in what you do is critically important to get to that level. So when I think of entry level and not necessarily young, just entry level to the
Mhm.
career, I like to coach or mentor them and say, okay, well, you have to give it a little bit of time to lament, meaning you need to understand the challenges that you're going to face. And some people take those challenges and can very easily problem solve because that's just innately part of who they are and how they got into it already. And other challenges, we need to recognize gaps. And so I think education is critical. When I had a bachelor's degree and then chose halfway, 6 years into my career to say, hey, let's go get a master's. But you don't have to spend that much money. You don't have to jump in that hard if it's something that you're still kind of critiquing and analyzing. Is this really where I want to be? You can still grow through certifications. And I guess my advice on certifications is look for those credentials that the open positions in your field are looking for. So if we
Hmm.
go into any job posting, you're going to see what is it that employers identify as important. So don't go out and spend your money and time on a credential that nobody knows what it is, basically. And so I think that's important when you market yourself, is to understand what speaks to the people that you're trying to communicate with. And those credentials are critical for that. They certainly can show that you've passed a test or that you're smart enough to do the steps. But then
Right.
I would recommend too, in those credentialing opportunities, really take it serious to dig in and become that subject matter expert that those letters mean. So I know a lot of people that have credentials and then they don't practice. So maybe I'm an HR person with a CSP, but I don't do anything in safety. Well, it's kind of false advertising.
Right.
So I just like to encourage, if you're going to actually take the time to put the letters behind your name, that you practice it so that it's a credible marketing tactic for your knowledge base.
Well, I think that comes back to your earlier point too about being really intentional about what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
What's that next stage in your career? How are you trying to market yourself? What are the skills you're trying to learn to get that career that you really want? And so, yeah, it allows you to kind of screen that a little bit because maybe getting, a master's is not the route to go. Maybe it's going to work out better for you to get a certification or vice versa. So it's a matter of understanding what is your end goal. And it doesn't even have to look at, let's say, a 10 to 15 year time frame. Maybe you're just like, what's my next, 2 years going to look like? What do I invest my time in so that I can continue to progress and learn? Especially early on in a career when it feels like you're still learning a whole bunch of stuff and practicing it. I think it's a great way to start to understand where you want to go. I mean, even safety has a whole bunch of different factors to it, right? Or facets to it, where that you can zero in on particular things. This is what a great way to understand what you want to learn and what certifications and credentials you want to kind of start pursuing.
And Gabe, I want to add on to what you're saying with all the facets. And in fact, I was literally going to just mention before you even said that, safety is one of those careers that is extremely transferable. For
Mm,
all the skills you learn, you can use them in probably any other position. So for instance, if you really want to be a plant manager, be a safety person first, because you will find the values that you build in that entry level to get to that top-notch position that you're striving for will exude throughout each step that you
mm,
take. Safety is one where you learn how to be a phenomenal trainer and communicator. You understand the dynamics of organizations and structure. You have to be strategic and prioritize activities, or you get extremely overwhelmed. You usually will have a budget, and so you get into finances and financial aptitudes. Um, and then the humanity side of it, you have to be a good listener. You have to be
right.
compassionate. You have to be a team player and a collaborator and a problem solver. And so I guess my point is, regardless of the facet that you go down, the skills that you're developing and using throughout your safety career are absolutely transferable. If you find
Mm,
that you love being an emergency planner, then go into emergency planning for the county or for the state or whatever, again, as your high level goal. If you find that you love ergonomics and you didn't realize it, boy, what a great opportunity to hone in on those skills and how to prevent our number one leading cause of injuries, strains and those musculoskeletal disorders. So
right.
again, I think anybody who maybe doesn't even know what they want to do for a job, if they have certain skills like motivation and dedication and have that people oriented component, this could be a great career for you, if for
Yeah.
nothing else than to expand your skill sets into where you find you want to go.
This is so funny to me because this kind of season of Safeonomics that Scott and I have been embarking on this year is really focusing on how do we get um, safety professionals to really kind of expand their skill set and grow and become an even more valuable resource for their own career and then for the organization that they're working in, whichever they may be. I think you've articulated that pretty well in being able to say, look, the safety professionals have a very diverse skill set that they can grow in, and what a great way to have that be an asset for an organization. And then even for a personal career development to be able to say, look, I want to grow in my soft skills. I want to grow in my ability to train or to organize. Um, what a great place to do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Additionally, some of the things like that I think are important to mention when you think about this career is there's a ton of organizations out there. And so I always want to encourage people to engage outside of their workforce because one, we don't know everything, even though maybe somebody's got 20 years experience. I don't know everything. So networking is absolutely critical and crucial because I might be serving a client and said, boy, I have no idea about that. But guess what? I know a guy. I know a gal. Just yesterday, I was at a plant where ergonomics was a really challenging thing. And I had never used the body wear for, like body gear to help with ergonomics and lifting. But guess what? I know a gal. I know a gal that's used it for 5 years. Let me give her a call. And so I guess the importance is recognizing that networking in this field is so important because you're never going to be the expert of everything. Also, regulatory interpretation. If you don't love reading interpretation letters, you might find somebody that does. And so you can say, tap, tap, hey, got this issue. How do you see it? And what a wonderful way to expand not only your network, but friendships, because you debate and you get to, resolve the issue the best you can for your client. So I wanted to just make note of networks, but also at least at this stage in my game, I chose to have a professional coach. So I hired somebody to help coach me. And I think that's really important too, depending on what's happening in your career path. I still think of myself as a, beginner, if you will, in the consulting arena, owning my own business or learning the CRM processes of capturing all of your clients and touches and some of those more business aspects. And so, I look at that and I'm like, hey, I don't know everything, but I know somebody who does. And so, always having that, if you will, board of directors is critical. Going back to your whole pivot conversation, it was so cool. Hey, what do you think of this? Bouncing your thoughts off of other people that have maybe been there, done that, and learning from them is not only really, really good for you, but it is an honor for anybody to share their story and help guide and support you and yours. So I would encourage people, no matter where they are in their process, to have that network, that board of directors, and maybe even for a season or two, have an actual coach or mentor. There's another piece when you talk about continuing your journey that I wanted to touch on, and that's mentorship. So as you grow in your profession and going back to that maybe mid-level safety manager, take the opportunity to mentor others. And I think that usually lends to another level of thinking and leadership that will do well when you go into, say, a director or vice president level. So mentorship is so critical in career management, whether you be the mentee or the mentor or both.
Yeah, I think this is some fantastic advice. I don't think anybody else that we've spoken with, Gabe, has suggested safety as a starting point for a career in different areas. I think
this is true.
But no, but I think that's great advice because obviously you bang on that, training, communicating, understanding those dynamics, prioritization, those are all really, really important skills, regardless of what area or profession you're in. So if you got started in safety and you're feeling a little bit trapped, maybe that there aren't those career advancement opportunities, what a great idea to look outside those safety walls and see what else is going on within your existing organization or maybe within the local business community. So I appreciate that.
I don't know if that was the purpose of the call, but
no,
honestly,
yeah.
It's another way of thinking about just the magnitude that safety provides to you for growth and professionalism.
And wouldn't the world be better if more safety professionals were in other areas within an organization to kind of expand that safety perspective or that safety first approach, regardless of what department you're in.
Some of my best plant managers have at some point in their life hit the safety rung. And I will tell you that those are the sites that have wonderful records around safety, and they're not chasing after injuries. They're chasing after all the preventative things and doing the proactive approaches, and the culture is positive. And I just had a conversation last week while I was on an audit, and the vice president of safety there we had a great conversation around how if you are safety minded, no matter where you are in the lineup, your culture will show it.
Yep.
And it will also span into how well you operate, so efficiencies in operations. And it will also expand into your HR support will be a positive experience versus disciplinarian. And it will also go into your quality. And so when you have a solid safety expectation top down as well as bottom up, when your culture is strong, it's strong in all those aspects, which is really what we hope to do for any organization, is make it successful, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
I thought that was a really fun conversation that just said the value of safety and the culture is really, really high on the perspective there.
Well, I think what's neat about that too, and even tying it back to your comments about mentoring and building those networks, is that some of the conversations that Scott and I have had with people is that the soft skills, like those interpersonal relationships, even some of the selling that's involved with and training and communicating with all sorts of different levels within an organization, the certifications that you get, and even an advanced degree from a university, may not prepare you well in those areas. It'll tell you how to interpret a regulation, or to how to set up a record or something like that. But how do you deal with difficult people? How do you deal with, you're talking with a plant manager one moment and then a line worker the next. How do you deal with all that? And I feel like that's where the mentoring and the networking are so critical, because now you're working with people that have real life experience, that can share that with you, and then you have a real life experience that you can help others with too. I've always seen my mentors as being the people that have kind of like, they're giving me the cheat sheet on life. So I get to get the shortcuts, and if I'm willing to listen and understand and implement, it actually works out really well. So I think that that's just another plug for mentoring and networking, that it fills in a lot of those really important gaps that might exist in a certification or a degree.
Yeah. And, I want to also talk about, right, certifications, degrees, mentors, networking, all of these soft skills. At the core of it, for safety in particular, I think it takes an individual who really cares. That's when
Yeah.
they're successful. You can
Yep.
have people that read regulations and are super analytical and can tell you right what the problem is, but maybe they're really bad at problem solving, because it means that you have to collaborate with others and have to influence others in the whole span of things. There's a place for everybody. Don't get me wrong. Every skill set is valuable. That said, I think when you're able to connect with your audience and at all sorts of levels, that's when you're going to be most successful. So I want to just share this. It's kind of a silly thing that I do, but it has truly worked and still does, if you're willing to put yourself out there. So at the plant where I was at for almost a decade, I got into the mode of high fives. So if you ever notice, you give somebody a high five, their reaction is like, what are you doing? Because one, we're adults, and two, you're standing there with your hand up.
Don't leave me hanging.
And guess what? 98% of the people do not leave you hanging. It's just it's a thing that okay, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But you'll also notice that 99% of the time you get a huge smile from the person, because it is kind of goofy, but it's a way of positive acknowledgement. It's a way of human connectivity. And I have found that it is profound to be positive. So I was just at another plant about a month ago doing a hazard assessment, and it was the first time there. I walk in and I'm talking to, frontline supervisors and the employees and different people on the floor. And every time I left, I was like, man, you are awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. High five. And they were like, again, what do you do?
Okay.
I came back to provide the report out, and it was the coolest experience because I had met these folks for 5 minutes. And a month later, I walk in, they're like, oh, the high five lady. And I kind of share that. It's a personal brand, perhaps, but I encourage people to think about what's your personal brand? Who do you want to be viewed as? And attitude has more than anything to do with it. So you can walk around, and I've seen safety professionals who are grumpy, with the don't talk to me face. And boy, usually their safety isn't in the best place. But it can be hard. There can be a lot of pressures and there can be a lot to do. It's all about how you approach it. So if you take that breath and say, hey, I'm gonna be happy today, I'll tell you what, it goes a lot better. And furthermore, you can employ a lot more people to work with you to help finish out those goals if they see you as somebody who's fun to work with or positive, that they know they're going to get recognized in a way that actually matters. And that's a whole nother podcast, I think.
Yeah.
Getting to know your people. And if you open up that door and be approachable, oh my goodness, it will serve you so well. Again, no matter what you're doing.
See, I feel like all of this is super connected. And I mean, we've talked about this before. I think even, before we started recording, about how difficult the safety profession can be. Like it can be emotionally tiring. It's physically tiring. There's a lot that can get in the way of you having that really, that positive outlook and that positive attitude when you get started. And so I think that's even why it's so important to have those connections with others. That if you're in a rough spot or you're just having a very trying situation, to be able to go back to your network and say, guys, I'm having a tough day.
How did you do this?
Yeah. Someone tell me that it's going to be okay, please.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I agree with you so much. That's where that network and, other safety people get it. Perhaps other folks in different disciplines do not, because there's so many things going on, from, oh my gosh, the regulator's here and I've got this guy, Johnny, who's hurt, that I just love Johnny and it hurts my heart. And, to your point, that emotion is interconnected. It's not just a check the box job. So, if you're really invested in what you're doing, it can take a toll on you. And you can't always be positive, because let's face it, we're human. But you can try. And I know that many, many years I had a whiteboard, and it usually would have anywhere from 5 to 25 quotes on it to remind me every day I walk in, this is my destiny. This is how I'm going to choose to approach the day. And, recognizing that you have a choice in how you approach life and then actually do something with it is half the battle. I can't say that in my 20s I realized that or recognized it to the magnitude I do now. And so it's been really fun maturing in this career or as a person and kind of reflecting. So that's another whole thing, is reflection and taking the time to go, okay, I've actually made it past the finish line. Because in most cases, safety is like, as soon as you get something done, there's 10 more things going on.
Yep.
Or when you want to get it done, there's 10 things that just so happen that you have no control over that pushes it off. So I think reflection is a really great tool. Again, no matter where you are in your career, but especially entry level, taking that time, recognizing the value of taking the time to say, hey, what have I done today? And if that done is a task, or if it's, I made, the operator smile today and he's, going through cancer, or again, that human aspect. I think it's important to build that into your thinking, and that reflection is really, really good.
I agree.
Yeah. I love that advice. I love the suggestion too, that the high fives. We'll have to have the Bravo high five branding or something, so
Brandy, right. So Bravo came from applauding people who are trying to have a world-class safety system, or just
that's so cool
improvement. So
that's awesome. Nice. I wanted to ask kind of, in your travels, lots of different positions with different types of organizations in different industries. Was there an approach that you could take for influencing senior management within an organization? We hear a lot, from people who are struggling to get that buy-in at the top. What suggestions would you have for them if they're struggling a little bit with that in their organization?
That's a tough one. And I think it comes into reading your audience a little bit. So one, remember that your senior leaders are people too. Sometimes it's a little bit intimidating depending on your organization's size, structure, who they are to the organization. So, building that personal connection is absolutely critical, because then they remember that you're a human too, and what you're asking for is not just part of the role that you play, but they want you to be successful too. So find a way to have that water cooler conversation, if you will, or find the courage to just point out, I need time with you, and I'd really like to talk about a few things. When you get that opportunity face to face, start with family, start with friends, start with, hey, I know that you're a golfer. Tell me about your last game. Whatever it is that you recognize matters to them, have that listening ear, because that will open up a lot of opportunity. And I think too, it can be intimidating, but I've always had kind of a no BS approach, where you just kind of look them in the eye and say, hey, we're on the same team. So if I'm not hitting the mark here, asking for funds, can you help me problem solve without money? And then they go, well, that's really hard. Maybe they'll have a little bit more grace. And I think this is an age old, use analytics, use fact-based data. And that does work, especially for accountants, just saying. It's the return on investment is going to be XYZ, which is really hard in safety too, because you cannot predict when your next injury is going to be and the extent of the cost or anything like that. But you could use trends and averages and really deep dive into what you do know is a fact. Historically, this is what we've spent. And so this, project is going to have a return on investment in 2 years, but it will also reduce risk outside of injuries. So make your business case. But I like to really encourage people to actually get to know their leadership, because it'll open up conversations beyond what you've ever expect. And it'll probably open up career options too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I like your no BS approach to that too, because what I've found is that people's BS meters are pretty good. And so if you come into that discussion with senior management or even an upper level, leader of some sort, and you're just doing it with some sort of hidden agenda without actually listening and understanding where this person's coming from, I think people pick up on that pretty quickly, and it'll actually harm you.
I totally agree. And okay, another little trick of the trade, silly as this might be, and I got a little silly things going on, but it helps me, so why not share? So I went to this personal leadership training. It was a week long. It was in the mountains, and there's no IT, like nothing. And at the end of it, I got a plaque with some golden bull poop. Like, kind of funny, right? But the whole point is it sits on my wall, and I have to check myself, when I think, oh, I can't do that because I don't have time. That thing is looking at me. Then check your BS. You can do these things. So I think too, one, other people know your BS, but do you? And so you need to take the opportunity to check yourself.
Yeah.
My current business coach gave me, this look like this. I was like, Brandy, nice story you're telling yourself. So I really kind of love the visual. And so, if there's something that triggers your mind to think about, check yourself before you go into a meeting with leaders. It helps. It really helps. Whatever that might be. Me, I've got bull poop on the wall. So.
Well, I think the nuance there of, you may not intentionally be going in to try to BS somebody, but you may be going in thinking that you're going to finesse the conversation, or people are going to come around to your side without just being, upfront about what your intentions are, right? So you're not you're not trying to deceive anybody, but you're just trying to soften the message where maybe you got limited time in front of senior management. You got to state that upfront what you're looking for, and then maybe work backwards from
Most
there.
of the time, senior leaders don't have time to be in the meeting that they're in. And so for them
Yes.
to give you the attention that's necessary, I almost think it's a welcome breath of fresh air for them when it's just a straightforward conversation. Look, and I love setting the stage with, we're on the same team here. So here's what I'm needing. If that's not feasible, I need an honest answer, but I need it quick. I don't want to do this 2 months of waiting for you to respond to an email. We have stuff to do, and we're going to work on it.
Yeah.
This is my priorities. Would you like me to reprioritize? You know, having some of those very pointed conversations, oh my gosh, they will respect you so much more and know that your intentions are to be working for that company and to be making changes instead of sitting around in the background.
Yeah. And the having some humanity in your approach, I think is an excellent message as well, because like you say, at the end of the day, we're all in this together as humans, right? So
Totally.
I think it goes a long way.
I feel like, you know, we've been visiting here for a while, and I'm not sure if you know, it's super clear, but my whole hope in these conversations, or if I mentor somebody, or even the career path and the clients that I work with, you guys know it. Let's make sure people go home safe. I just got goosebumps thinking about just different experiences where it can get really bad and you don't even know it. I had somebody who was not given light duty work because of their restrictions, and that ended up transitioning into financial burden, transitioning into depression and alcoholism, transitioning into a lost mortgage, transitioning into, you know, they didn't have a house anymore. They couldn't have their kids. So it was just the most heartbreaking experience to watch. Although, you know, at some degree of a distance, I think it's important to recognize how much our efforts to help people who are injured either get back to work or find alternative work, whatever it might be. Too often I visit with safety professionals that are just so frustrated. Oh, they're using the system, or, you know, it's been so long, they've had to figure it out by now. Not true. Take that moment to really get eyeball to eyeball and say, hey, how you doing? Is there something else we could be doing? You know? And so I wanted to get that message out here too, is so much of what we do gets to, hey, it's a compliance thing, or it's best for the business. Hold up. The whole reason we exist is because of our workforce. So let's make sure that what happens here doesn't impact their life negatively.
Right. Yeah, it's a people business for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's not always easy, because you do have folks that challenge your heart a little bit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think that, you know, to recap a little bit, some advice that, you know, we haven't heard from others. Look outside the profession. You know, it's okay to look for career advancement, to look maybe adjacent to safety or outside of safety. I think people talk a lot about mentorship, but I don't think too many people have recommended being a mentor as much as you go get a mentor. So I think that's really, really good sound advice. And I really loved the, you know, because again, we hear how to safety professionals struggle with influencing senior management. They struggle kind of getting buy-in, you know, when they ask for investment. And your suggestion, I think, is invaluable about sitting down with them and saying, okay, how can we solve this without, you know, a financial investment, and getting them to buy into trying to solve that problem with you. And if you can do it without money, great, but chances are they're probably going to come around and realize that they do need to make some investments. So some great advice. Business coach as well. I don't think we've heard that advice before. So some great advice so far. I don't want to, you know, ask, you know, for more than we should be receiving in our interview, but any final kind of advice for safety professionals as we kind of come to the end of the discussion today?
Oh man, final advice. Enjoy every day for what it is, because you never know what tomorrow will bring, right? So I think that's something that's just life advice, but definitely influences our jobs. So
yeah, I agree. I like your perspective too, to understand that this is about people and you actually have to care in doing that. And I think that that will spill out to everybody that a professional touches, and whether it's through a high five or even just their, just how they show up to work that day. I think that's having that mentality that it's about people is huge. So
Yeah.
thank you for
And
sharing that.
don't forget it, because it's sometimes you get wound up in all the projects and all of the other demands. So
Yep, I agree.
well, I sure appreciate that you had me on your show today. I'm excited to see it, hopefully how it can impact and support other people to grow.
Oh, I know it will. Absolutely.
Couldn't find the high five.
The five emoji. That works.
Virtual 5.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brandy. Really appreciate your time today, and look forward to I think having a follow-up. We should definitely
Yeah, seriously.
bring
We,
Brandy.
we touched on a few things that I definitely want to see in a further further
Yeah.
discussion.
Wonderful. Well, have a wonderful day.
Very cool. Thanks, Brandy.
You bet.